get started. So, hey everybody, thanks a lot for taking the time out of your day to come and join us today for our webinar. Today we are presenting on seeing real results with Grantek's OEE Accelerator, a solution built by Grantek to improve productivity and ROI. My name is Sam Russem, and today I am joined by my friends Javier and Reggie, and we're going to walk you through the webinar today. Before I get started, I do like to kind of just lay out a couple tips and ground rules to make sure everybody's getting the most out of the webinar. Do your best to not get distracted, phones on do not disturb, things like that. That's a good reminder to me to do that so it doesn't interrupt the actual webinar. So do know that's available. You can use the chat feature over to the side. We might not be answering in real time, but especially if you have questions or anything, that's where we'll pull those at the end of the webinar. I always recommend people take their own notes. We do post these online after the fact, but I always like to write down the pieces of these webinars that I think are going to be valuable for me and some takeaways that I want to bring back to the business. And answer the polls. We do have 2 poll questions early in the webinar to get some information from the audience, and we would really appreciate your participation in that. So what are we going to talk about today? So here's our little introduction section here. Right after this, we're going to talk more about OEE and return on investment specifically. We'll talk about some OEE fundamentals. Then we really dive into connecting that OEE to the value and the dollars and those ROI questions. Then we get to the real fun part where we show a live demo of Grantek's OEE Accelerator, and then I'll close us out with a couple of next steps and follow-ups, and then a Q&A period. And to wrap up our introductions, I'm going to hand over the mic to Reggie from Sepasoft. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thanks, Sam. I really appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you taking the time out your day today. So again, I'm Reggie Valin, Director of Sales with Sepasoft. So I work very close with the Grantek team on solutions for our mutual customers. So thank you for joining. So just a little bit about Sepasoft. For those that aren't as familiar, we're built from in the field based needs. And what I mean when I say that is our founder and CEO was in the field working with customers to build out these different MES solutions, and just noticed there was a big gap from a competitor perspective in the software offering, whether that's licensing model, functionality, etc. So he's decided to build the software. So as a software publisher, that's really what we're here for, is to really bridge the gap from the plant forward through the ERP. So we've been around since 2010. We're an Inductive automation strategic partner, over 1,000 implementations worldwide. We are a global company. And I think one of the bigger differentiators for us is that we're 100% focused on MES, right? From a pre-sale, post-sale, tech support, engineering, all focused on MES and enhancing the solutions for our manufacturing customers. So really excited to partner with Grantek today on their accelerator solution. It's really helping a lot of our customers reach that ROI expectation sooner than later. And that's really, what it boils down to from a business perspective. So nice to meet everyone. Thanks for giving me the time to talk. And with that, I'll pass it to Sam and Javier.
So maybe a quick intro for the 2 of us before we go and you hear us talk for the next 45 minutes. So hi, everybody. I'm Sam Russem. I'm Grantek's Senior Director of Smart Manufacturing Solutions. So I'm in charge of Grantek's smart manufacturing strategy, helping both our customers and our own company to deliver innovative and valuable solutions leveraging Industry 4.0 technologies. Javier, you want to take a minute to introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Javier Castellanos. I'm MES Functional Specialist in Grantek, and I'm in charge of the OEE Accelerator that we're going to present to all of you today. So very excited about being here in this webinar. Thanks, Sam.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to start with a conversation around OEE and return on investment. Again, thanks a lot, Reggie and the Sepasoft team for introducing us today. We really appreciate having a partner like Sepasoft to help us with webinars like this, but also, you guys make really great software that helps us help our customers. So thanks for you and the entire team to help us do that. So again, as we mentioned, there's really 2 main things we're focusing on in the webinar today. We are going to talk about our OEE Accelerator solution, which is a tool we've built using that Sepasoft platform and Ignition, and we're going to show that off in a live demo. But to start, we're going to do more of an investigation into return on investment of OEE and MES and Industry 4.0 digital transformation initiatives as a whole. And to help us guide that conversation, I do have a couple of poll questions to try to help us better understand where you all are coming from as our audience. So our first question, which should be popping up any second, there it is, thank you, Jeff. How often do you need to anticipate or estimate an ROI to get a project approved in your company, right? Sometimes this is all the time, right? Every single dollar I spend needs to have a justification behind it, right? Sometimes there's a threshold, like anything that's over $250,000 means that we're going to need to do an ROI. Some people, it's just the Wild West. Go get your projects done. You have a budget, just don't spend it all, and we'll all be happy, right? So how often are you asked to use ROI to justify a project? Okay, I see a couple of answers coming in. This is around kind of what I expected. I see around 2/3 of the people are saying that most of the time we are using ROI to answer our to justify projects, and no one is saying rarely or never. So okay, pretty far out there. And then a follow-up question. You spend all this time calculating your expected ROI on projects. How often are you going back and checking that? And if you do go and check that expected payback, how often are you realizing that you were correct or incorrect? How accurate were you guys? And this is an anonymous poll. I'm not going to link all of this to what you all are doing or anything like that, but really kind of curious to hear from the people that are justifying these projects, how often we're going back and doing those checks. And I'm seeing some answers kind of across the board, which is interesting. But it does mean that only two of our respondents so far, around 20%, are saying that they do validate these and they're accurate, whereas most people aren't validating them at all, or they do validate and it's inaccurate, right? So really interesting information. So thanks everybody for sending that out for us. We're going to talk more today about if we are going to be using these tools to help justify projects, what are ways that we can get to the answer simpler, and how can we close the loop on this and try to hold ourselves a little bit more accountable to make sure that we are picking the right projects based on this ROI data. So thanks everybody for going through and helping us out with the polls there. So as demonstrated, right, most of us are using ROI to justify projects. We live in a world of return on investments. Easy to see kind of why that would be, right? It's a simple metric that just really kind of helps us to show that we're going to get more money out of an investment than we had to put into it. So it's not surprising that us at Grantek are frequently asked around what the ROI of implementing an OEE system is, right? You all just said so frequently you would need to justify the ROI of every project. That can be tough to answer for OEE, right? Because it doesn't necessarily provide a value directly. It does provide value, like, don't get me wrong, but it's best used as a tool to help you understand the ROI of other projects that you're going to do. Normally, when you're installing an OEE system, you are going to get some 3 to 5% is what we've seen efficiency bump just from people knowing that they're being tracked, knowing that monitoring is in place. You get a little bit more accountability through that. But really, the biggest bang for your buck you're going to get is from getting this consistent real-time OEE monitoring and then doing the changes that you need to the people, process, and technology based on that data to get those really more significant gains that you're looking for. So let's maybe change the approach and come at this from a slightly different angle. I'm going to show us how we can use OEE to calculate the theoretical unrealized potential in dollars that we're leaving on the table for all these manufacturing assets that we have. And then we're going to talk about how we can use a tool like the OEE Accelerator to capture some of that unrealized potential and hold ourselves accountable to those continuous improvement goals that we justify these projects on. We'll start with a little bit of a dive into OEE fundamentals just to make sure that people know kind of some of the theory behind what we're talking about here. So if you've seen some of our previous webinars on this, this might be a little familiar, but always good to review, right? OEE is a performance monitoring metric that helps us track the efficiency of our manufacturing assets. It's pretty easy to understand. At its core, it is 3 component scores of availability, throughput, and quality, then summarized into a single OEE, overall equipment effectiveness score. We're going to break that down a little bit more in the next few slides. It's usually readily measurable. The base data that you need is just to know when you're running, your total parts versus your bad parts, and your run rates. That's about it. Most automation systems do have this data available, and if not, it's something that can be interpolated or added through a small project to get that data true to what's happening in real time. And finally, that basic form of OEE is immediately useful right out of the box, but it's also extendable, and you can use this as a baseline to craft it into more what your business environment is looking for. You can connect it to ERP, you can connect it to production scheduling, you can record a bunch of your downtime data. There's a lot of additional context that you can add to this OEE tool. So as I mentioned, OEE is comprised of 3 parts: availability, performance, and quality, usually abbreviated as A, P, and Q. And it works like this. If you have all the time in the day your asset could be producing, you might not actually be scheduled to run all that time. You could have breaks or maintenance windows or things like that. So if you take all that away, you then have your planned production time, which is really the window of time we're focused on for OEE. Now, if you don't run that entire time that you expected to, due to machine faults or unexpected breaks or things like that, that's counted as what we call an availability loss, time that you were supposed to be producing, but you weren't. And then for the time that you were running, what if you weren't running at full speed? Maybe you have a new operator who doesn't know that product XYZ can run at 100 bottles a minute. They only set it to 70, right? If you weren't producing as much as you could be, that's a performance loss. And then finally, if there's time that you were producing, but you were producing a part that can't actually be sold or used due to a quality problem, that's not valuable time either. So that's a quality loss. Now we can kind of see how each of those 3 scores combine together to give us a total OEE. So assume on a perfect day, on a perfect run, we know that we can make 1,000 units on an 8-hour shift. And we're going to say for this example, we're scheduled to run for the entire 8 hours. And imagine that we did run those entire 8 hours and that we ran at full speed the whole time and that every part we made passed a quality check. We said that we can make 1,000 units in an 8-hour shift. We did 100% OEE, 1,000 parts as promised. Now, let's say that we take a little bit of availability out of this. What if we didn't actually run for that full 8 hours? What if we had machine breakdowns for 2 hours, which would leave us running about 75% of our scheduled time? So we're still running at 100% speed. We're still running perfect quality, but we're only running 75% of the time we thought we would. We only make 750 units. And then what if we start to add more compounding losses to that? So what if we weren't running at full speed for the time we were running? Let's say we were actually running at more 2/3 of what would be our ideal speed. Now we have an availability and a performance loss, and those 2 things compound. You're only running at 2/3 of the speed for the 6 hours that you're running. So even though my quality is perfect, my overall OEE is now dropped down to 50%. And then if we start to add in the quality loss as well, you can see the numbers really kind of start to get to suffer here. So say this one maybe isn't as bad. Of those 500 units we produced, 400 passed quality checks, so our quality score is 80%. So now we have an availability of 75, performance 66, quality at 80, and because this is all percentage mathematics, that drops us down to a 40% OEE on the line. So we can see how smaller hits to every category can kind of combine into a significant effect on the overall utilization of the asset. And 2 more quick notes before I leave this example section. Since we multiply these percentages together, if any one of these scores drops to 0, the whole score drops to 0. And that makes a ton of sense, right? If I'm running the whole time and I'm running at full speed, but every single part that I made failed a quality check, that was 0 productive time that I had. The other note that usually comes up in Q&A is that, yes, you can also factor in planned production time to your OEE calculation. That's called TEEP, or Total Effective Equipment Performance. Our OEE Accelerator can do that too if you'd like. It's really just a philosophical question of if you want to know the efficiency of an asset over all calendar time or just over the time that the thing was supposed to be running. So now that we know a little bit more about OEE, let's start to connect that to ROI and dollars and value again. And again, we'll do this through a sample scenario. Say you're in charge of improving a specific production line at your facility. And again, hopefully, like most of these pilots would go, if this is successful, you're going to roll this out company-wide. So you've observed this line, you've spoken with supervisors and operators and engineers, and you've uncovered 3 potential projects for this example, all at the same cost. You could fix your biggest downtime reason, which would reduce your total downtime by 25%. You can do a retraining program for your operators to make sure they're running the machine using ideal parameters, which could increase throughput by 20%, or a new SPC system, which is expected to cut rejects in half. But what does all of this mean in terms of dollars, right? This is what ROI is for, is to take all of these projects and try to cast them into an apples to apples light so you can pick the biggest bang for your buck. Let's start to figure this out. First things first. Probably the hardest thing you'll need to do is that we do need to get a sense of the money that we make from the line. Different manufacturers and their finance departments all kind of think about this differently. For this example, let's say I work with finance, we came up with a number that I make about $1 million of profit from this line from our last year, from the last year's worth of data. Again, that's a nice round number to kind of make our math a little easier today. Great, so the next thing that we're gonna do is figure out our OEE. If I already have a system like Grantek's OEE Accelerator, I can pull our numbers from there, but since you're all in our webinar today, I'm assuming you don't have that tool. So now some time to make some good assumptions, right? There's definitely a lot of value to having a real-time with data from the direct machines, all the time on OEE tracking system. But when we'll get to that in a bit, but for now, I think it's a couple of assumptions, and napkin math can provide a good amount of insight. We've been watching this line for a long time. We know it well. We can say from our observations that the line runs about 75% of the time it's supposed to. It usually runs at about 66% of its advertised ideal rate, and about 80% of what is produced passes first pass quality checks. If those numbers sound familiar, it's because they're the same ones from the example earlier, just to keep things simple. So as we determined earlier, 75% availability, 66 performance, 80 quality is a 40% OEE score. And I know I made $1 million in profit running at around 40% OEE. So I can back calculate, okay, if Ryan ran at 100% OEE, that's theoretically $2.5 million I could have been making. 1.5 million of untapped potential on that line. And if we want to get cute, have a little bit of fun, we can say that that $2.5 million divided by 100 points of OEE means that every point of OEE I do is worth about $25,000 a year. And again, this is all recurring returns. Hopefully this is profit that is annually coming into your business. So with that context, let's start to look at those projects again. What is the best project? That availability one, the throughput, or quality? So we have our baseline OEE at 40%. If I go and cut that 25% of the time that I'm down by another 25%, it puts us at about 81% availability, which increases my OEE by 3 points, or about $75,000 a year. The throughput section, while that was only 20% of a gain, there was more of a gain to be had. So that actually takes our performance from 66 to 79%, $200,000 a year for that fix. And that quality system, how great does that cutting down your rejects by 50% sound? But since we already had a quality score of 80, that 50% is not as much of a gain as you could have gotten through some of these other projects that you had, right? So now we do have a very quick apples to apples way to combine a whole bunch of projects to compare a bunch of projects. And we have a couple of numbers that we can use to try to see if these financial returns we're expecting are actually achieved. So there's a lot of assumptions in this scenario, obviously, right? The way that I got those profit numbers from finance, again, that's probably going to be a tough, complicated conversation that's going to take a lot of time, and I just came up with $1 million, right? So that's always a big assumption itself. The idea that every project costs the exact same is certainly an ideal scenario. there's an important assumption that the projects we're doing aren't changing the profitability on the line in this case too, right? What if by retraining those operators, they expect higher wages and pay and my OpEx goes up, right? So there are intricacies to this, and Grantek does provide more in-depth ROI investigations if you want. We do this all based off of Mesa International's material on finding ROI of smart manufacturing, and it can get into a very detailed ROI calculation. But I also think there's a lot of value to this quick napkin math version of this. And you can see, hopefully, how this could be tweaked to fit into your environment. If you don't have an OEE system today, I encourage you to go and start doing some of this napkin math with you and your team. You should pick a line in your plant and get 3 qualified people to do your best guess at what its availability, throughput, and quality scores are. If you all are getting the same numbers, you probably have a pretty good sense of that line and kind of what you should be focusing your earliest improvements on. But what if you come back with 3 very different answers, right? That's where you start to see the immediate value of an OEE system. And of course, there's the real-time monitoring that's so powerful as well. I also really encourage people to think about if we can really associate OEE with value and we really believe that connection, and then we do have that real-time, continuous, directly from the source of the truth OEE system available to us every day, that can really change our daily operations, right? Every operations and maintenance and engineering stand-up meeting has an OEE dashboard showing you where your biggest value opportunities are and where people should be focusing their efforts. Every project can be framed in its light of how does it change my availability, performance, and quality, and what kind of returns can I expect? And maybe most importantly, it gives us that opportunity to close the loop and hold ourselves accountable to our ROI projections. If I said that that throughput project was going to gain me 10 points of OEE, did it? I have a real-time system with historical data to tell me what it was at the beginning, what it was at the end, and what it is over time to see if I actually got the OEE gains and if that hit the bottom line the way I expected it to. And one more thing before we get to the demo. Our OEE Accelerator does all of those calculations I just showed, and it also does a lot more out of the box to help you. This is where that metadata I described that could come in and be really helpful. Let's say that we also have information like our shift data, where we know who is running the line at what time, and we combine that with OEE. And we might see that maybe a particular shift or an individual has a very different performance score than other shifts, and there might be a retraining opportunity there. Or if you know, say, what SKU is running, and you notice that particular SKUs have a significantly lower quality score than some of your others, that's an opportunity for you to be working with the quality department to see how those specific materials can pass quality more often. And finally, machine downtime is one of the top things that's included in almost any OEE system you see today. Knowing if you're available or not is certainly valuable, but the next question is obviously, what are the machine faults that took me down? So having downtime information right there in your OEE system is a very common addition and one that our system does do. So that's my part on the theory and the dollars and the value. We're going to get to the OEE Accelerator demo after one more quick slide from me to tell you about what you're going to see here. So Grantek's OEE Accelerator is our go-to solution for getting our customers started with OEE. It is built from the Ignition platform and leveraging Sepasoft's MES modules. So if you already have Ignition, this is a real easy button to get started with. If you don't, that's also still fine. This works for discrete or process manufacturers. We can do it on-prem. We can do it in the cloud. We have all sorts of options to get you started real quick. It is going to give you those OEE values we talked about, but it also does that downtime analysis. And we really do see this as kind of the launch point to your bigger OEE and MES system to improve continuous improvements in your overall manufacturing intelligence. How do we do it? We do it fast. When we do these accelerators, we really want to start with the basics of OEE, what comes out of the box, and expand from there. Otherwise, we see a tendency to over-design. And we really, the principles of OEE are simple. We can get this out there and working for you all real quick, and we can expand on it later and add that complexity. Building on a platform like Ignition does mean that we have standard tools for everything from connecting to PLCs to showing trends from building up security models, so we don't need to do that from scratch. And it's real easy to use this. Like, yes, some training is involved, but a lot of experienced people can just pick this up and use it and understand it pretty quickly. So with that framing, I'll pass the mic over to Javier, who's going to take us through a live demo.
Yep, sounds good. Perfect. Let me go then and share my screen here. There we go. All right, so let's start this demo then. I will start the demo on the line dashboard here. This dashboard is one of the main tools that we have in the accelerator, and that helps people on the shop floor to see what's happening on the line. It will give you real-time feedback as to what's being manufactured and what's the current state of the line as well. So you can see here at any given time what product is being manufactured, what is the work order that is active in the shop floor as well, and the state of the line. This state of the line will change depending on the events that happen in each one of the equipments on the line, which we are going to see live just in a minute. Then at the body of the dashboard, you can see the indicators from the line in two time frames here. So you can see the first one for the production run, and that will give you how much product is being manufactured since the run started, what is the target that you should be at any given moment based on the standard rate of the product that is being manufactured in this line, and what's this total scrap that has been reported in this line. With these counters, the accelerator will calculate the OEE and its KPIs, availability, performance, and quality. So all that data, it's available as it's happening on the shop floor, as production is happening on the shop floor. And then in the right-hand side, you can see live comparison between your actual production per hour and the actual the target production that you should be at any given time since the production run started. Then in the second time frame, you can see the same indicators, but for the current shift. So you can see how much product you have produced since the shift started, your target for the shift, and total scrap, and the OEE for the shift. And the right-hand side, you have the same comparison, but for the entire shift. So you can see always at any given time how behind you are from the target that you should be producing at. And then at the bottom of the second time frame, you can see a visual representation of the state of the line for the entire shift. So you can see what has happened on this line since the beginning of the shift. You will see in green all the time that the line has been up and running. You will see in gray all the time when the line went idle, and in red the time when the line actually went down. And if you point in each one of these bars, the red ones, you can see actually what equipment caused the downtime in the line, when the downtime event started and when it ended. So as I said, the dashboard will react to those events that are happening in the line. But let's see how the dashboard actually will represent those events. So for that, I will pull up the simulator, which will help me to emulate signals coming from a PLC, which is connected to each one of the lines on my shop floor. I'm sorry, to each one of the equipment on my line. Then in this example, each one of the boxes represents equipment in my line, and my material will flow from the dow feeder all the way down to the palletizer. In this example, I have identified my knife as my key cell. That means that when my knife is up and running, my line is making money. And when that knife goes down, my line has stopped producing. So I need to take care of that. So I will use each one of these buttons to represent those changes on the state of one of the cells here. So for example, I will go ahead and say, okay, my knife is down. So if my knife is down, as I said, since it's the key cell of my process, that will cause the line to be considered down. So I'll click here in my fault button, and then you can see how the dashboard now is blinking in red and it's telling you, hey, your line is down due to an unplanned downtime event, and is the knife the one that is causing this downtime? And even more, is telling you also what's the reason that the knife is reporting as a fault that is causing the equipment to go down. Then later on, when that downtime event has been resolved, the issue in the knife has been resolved, and the knife is back up and running, boom, I'll click the on button to emulate that. Then the system will sense that change on the signal from a PLC, and it will say, okay, now the knife is back up and running, so that means that my line is back up and running. So now, so perfect. So that's how operators and supervisors will have in real time a representation of there is an issue on the knife, which is the key cell. But let's see what happens now if the downtime is caused by some other equipment than the knife. Let's say, for example, that my metal detector goes down. If that happens, that metal detector being down will eventually block the end rubber of sending more material down to the metal detector. And eventually, that will block my knife of sending material down from to the end rubber. So the line will eventually be down because the knife will be blocked, but the root cause of that event is not the knife, would be the metal detector. So let's see how the dashboard will represent that. So I will fold the metal detector here. Then you can see in my simulator how the end rubber gets blocked and my knife gets blocked. And now my dashboard is telling me, hey, your line is down due to an unplanned downtime event, but now it's telling me that the root cause of this downtime was a metal detector, not the knife itself. And even more, it's telling me the reason that the metal detector is reporting as the root cause of the issue. So you can see here how the system is smart enough to determine, based on the data that it's getting from a PLC, what's the root cause of this downtime event. And of course, you can monitor and report and analyze the data, and we will see just in a minute how, but this will be the foundation for your root cause analysis later on. So then when the line is back up and running, there you go. The dashboard will react and will say, okay, the line it's running again. All right, so one more feature that I would like to touch on in regards to the downtime. So every time that the downtime, let's say, let's go back to my example of the metal detector. So every time that the line goes down, as we saw, the system will detect that. It will provide feedback in the dashboard, but it would also generate an alarm. So those alarms can be seen here in the alarm viewer. So you can see here in red the alarm that is active. So the system will identify, hey, there is a line down that should be attended, and that will be reported as an alarm here in the system. So operators on the shop floor can go to the alarms viewer, and they can see here that an alarm is active, and also they can see the state or the status of that alarm at any given time. So they can see that it's active but hasn't been acknowledged by anybody. So so what we have implemented here out of the box as well is that if that alarm goes up for more than 60 seconds, which is a parameter that is configurable in the system, the accelerator will automatically escalate that alarm to an email. So this is the email that I'm getting just now because of this alarm. And it will tell the recipient, oh, there is a line down. It will tell them, okay, this is line down in Allentown, and it has been down since 2:34. It will also give some instructions as to what to do with this alarm, which are configurable as well. In this example, I'm just putting here an example instruction to just log in the system and acknowledge this alarm. So the idea is that the recipient of this email will come back to the alarm viewer, will select the alarm, and will acknowledge that here. that will cause that alarm state to change from unacknowledged to acknowledged, so that operators in the shop floor who are looking into the alarms viewer can see that this user, in this case me, already went into the system and acknowledged that alarm. So in that way, they can have a real-time feedback as to what's happening with this alarm, and they can get an indication that Javier already acknowledged that and it's taking care of this downtime event. Then later on, when Javier goes and fixes the line and the knife gets back up and running, that alarm gets cleared out from the queue. There we go. It goes away, and that closes the loop of the alarming. All right, so that's how the accelerator will provide feedback in the dashboard and also will alarm and escalate downtime events. So all that data, it's being tracked in the system, of course. So now the next thing that I want to show you is how you can actually analyze and monitor that data, right, that is coming into the system. And for that, I will show you 3 tools that we have in the system. The first one is the plant overview. The plant overview is a dashboard that will allow you, allow supervisors and managers to monitor the OEE data, and not only from one line, but from an entire site. And even more, if you have multiple sites in your instance, you could navigate to each one of those sites and look at the OEE data from there. So in my example here in Allentown, I can see the OEE for the last 7 days and its breakdown per day. And I can see for each area in Allentown, in this case, I have only production, so I can see in production the OEE for the last 7 days as well and its breakdown. And for each line within the production area, I can see the OEE for the last 12 hours and its breakdown. So I can see all of that just from one single place now. So I can monitor what's happening on my entire plant. In addition to that, for the lines, I can also see the data from the current run. So I can see the OEE for the current production run. I can see what product is being manufactured there and what's the progress, like how much product has been produced against the plant. And I can see how much time the line has been run, how much time the line has been down. From here, I can drill down into individual states of each equipment in this line. So for that, I will click in this chevron here, and that will take me to the line view, the line overview of this line 1. So I can see here each one of the equipment that I have in this line. You can see here how I have OEE data for my dog feeder, knife, and rubber. And that's because in addition to monitoring the line OEE, you can monitor the OEE of individual equipments. That's an option. You don't have to configure each one of the equipments in your line, but if you want to do a more granular analysis on specific equipment, you can do that here. And you can see the data in a similar way. This dashboard is live. It will react to the state of the line. It will calculate the OEE and its KPIs in real time as well. And you can see the same information from the line. And then from here, you can drill down, further down into the details of each piece of equipment or even the line to see the breakdown of my OEE per hour since the current run started. If you scroll to the right, you can see also the top 5 downtime reasons for the current run for this, in this case for the line, but again, I could have selected any other equipment in my line. And if I scroll to the right, I can see the scorecard of this line, like how much product I have produced per hour since the run started. Okay, so this is our plant overview. This is again the first tool that we have to analyze data, and that helps you to see the OEE data of your entire plant. The next tool that I would like to explore is our production report. So our production report is our starting point to start monitoring and understanding what happened on the line, let's say yesterday or the last shift. So it'll gives you a visual representation here of the time when the line was idle, down, or running. It will also give you the OEE and its KPIs. It also will show you how much product you started on the line, how much product was rejected, and how much product, and we'll compare that good quantity of product that you produced against the target count based on the deal rate of the products that you run into this period. And with that, it will give you the efficiency. The report will also show you a summary of the states of the line. It will tell you the actual time that the line was running, the time that the line was idle, and also the time that the line was down, but also will show you how many times the line went down. In addition to this, if you would have, let's say, maintenance or other events scheduled in the line, they will show up in here as well in this summary. And then in the right-hand side, you can see a downtime reasons Pareto that will help you to find out your top offender and drive your continuous improvement activities right there. So again, this report is intended to understand what happened on my line or how well my line performed, let's say in the last shift or in the last day. That's the purpose of this report. We offer this as an initial point in our implementations. And of course, the report can be enhanced and extended to align better to the needs that you may have. But as a starting point, we have found our experience that it's kind of useful to start getting data and start getting value out of the accelerator. Finally, I would like to show the line downtime. This line downtime is intended to analyze larger periods of data. So, for example, if I want to see my line downtime for the entire month, so I will select my February 1st, my date there. I'll select then this date here. There we go. And you will see on the left-hand side right there the total number of the total time that your line has been idle, run, or down. So I can see here that for line 1, my line has been down for 337 minutes, and it has gone down 94 times. So in the right-hand side, I can see the breakdown of that downtime per date. And I can even see here that between today and yesterday, I was having some issues on this line, which is probably hard to see with all this running time here. So I'll go ahead and hide that running time. And now I can see better that today my line has been down 21 minutes and has been idle for 2.5. The additional analysis that I want to do on this line, for example, it's to see the downtime per equipment. So I can click on the downtime and then select the equipment dimension here. And that will give me the breakdown of my downtime for the selected period per equipment. So in the table in the left-hand side, I can see that my slitter has been down for 220 minutes, which is more than 50% of my total downtime just by itself. So certainly that right there will tell me, okay, you go there and fix figure out what happens later for sure. But in addition to that downtime, I can also see how many times my equipment went down. And with that, for example, I can see here that my unrobber, although it's not my top offender for this line, has gone down 51 times. So it's certainly something that I want to look at. And I may want to say, okay, I want to see how many of those 51 events were actually short stops or speed losses, and how many were actual downtime. So you can see here, okay, so the majority of my downtime is caused by long downtimes, real downtimes, and on this and robber equipment, but 36 times the robber has gone down. So that means that it's failing quite often. So if I look at my breakdown by date, I can see that those speed losses happen only between today and yesterday. So, okay, so it's only today and yesterday. So I may want to see, okay, to get a better understanding, I want to see the breakdown of that those speed losses per shift. And then I can see here that those speed losses started yesterday on my second shift and have been affecting the equipment today as well. So probably something happened yesterday during the second shift, and that is not causing the majority of my downtime, but it's causing the equipment to go down very often. So with this analysis, you can drive better actions as to say, okay, I need to go check on the logs from the second shift yesterday and start my investigation there of the root cause of these speed losses of downtime costs, and drive some improvements against it. So those are the main tools that we have in the system to analyze data. And I think that's pretty much it for the demo. Sam, we'll head it back to you. Sure, you made it.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that, Javier. I'm going to go back and share my screen. See that coming up right now? And we've only got just 10 minutes left. We were chatty today, so I'll cover the last two real quick, just so we can get to a couple of the questions I've seen popping up into the chat. So to wrap this up, we know that OEE is a great tool to help you understand the situation on the ground using standardized performance metrics that have been applied for hundreds of thousands of manufacturing assets across the globe. It's a great tool for improvement planning, helping you to back up your project plans with real data and ROI information, but it's also such an important accountability tool to make sure that we're actually realizing these gains that we said that we would get. This is not a one and done system. This is a linchpin of your continuous improvement program. So what you all saw today, right? We saw that the ROI from OEE does come a little bit from the tool, but mostly comes from you using it to pick other projects that are going to optimize your ROI. You can calculate the untapped potential of a lot of your systems today with a couple of assumptions and some napkin math, but maturing beyond that and getting to a real-time OEE system that can really embed a culture of ROI and value-first mindsets into your operational structure and provide the system of accountability, that's where the real gold is. And Grantek's OEE Accelerator gives you all of that real-time monitoring, along with the extra metadata and the ability to extend it beyond that to other applications like SPC or track and trace or batch management or things like that, all leveraging that Ignition and Sepasoft platform. So thanks a lot for the demo and all of your time today. We are going to open up the floor for a couple of questions. And I see a couple jumping into the chat right now. Okay, so we have a question. The example being shared is fully integrated with the equipment. Can manual downtime reason codes be entered for legacy equipment? What if the equipment on the chain can't be integrated? Oh, and I see that's a little bit related to another question around how you insert downtime reasons. So I don't think we're going to jump back into the demo to maybe show all of that live today, but yes, both of those situations are possible and things that we can handle. We can also schedule a follow-up meeting with anybody if you'd like to kind of go through more specific questions. Javier, do you have any comments kind of on the technical side of what happens to do manual downtime reasons for things that might not be connected to the network?
No, just to say that it's a very common practice, and the accelerator has a couple of screens built in that will allow operators to capture downtime, create downtimes, even after the fact. They don't have to go there to the screen in the shop floor and hit start and end if they can't, so they can create it after the fact. And also to say that those downtimes could actually be combined with automated collection as well. So you could have the manual downtime screens working along with automatic collected data as well. So all of that can happen at the same time. So.
Yep, great. And then another cool thing that you can do also is that you can alter some of this data after the fact with full traceability as you need to as well, right? So if you say, if our knife was down for a while, but then we decide later that 50% of that was due to maybe a material shortage, you can go into the system, split that downtime, manually reallocate some of it to a material shortage. And then if later a supervisor comes in and says that was somebody cheating the numbers or something, they have full traceability and can undo all of those changes all up and down if you need to, which is pretty neat. So another thing, again, we can go into more detail if we do a private demo with anybody. Okay, I see another audience question. For multiple sites, do you need an instance of Ignition per site? Good question. So the spirit of the license for inductive automation and Sepasoft as well is that it is a per site license. So yes, usually for a site, you have a Ignition instance there that is licensed. You have a Sepasoft instance that is licensed per site, and that is again and you roll that out per site. There may be flexibility on that based on your particular use case. For example, if we're not as concerned with the equipment and we're doing more of an enterprise instance, sometimes there's some flexibility around that. So there is, of course, my little it depends asterisk on everything. But yes, in general, it is an Ignition license per site. Oh, and that actually flows directly into the next question I see coming in too, which is what is the pricing model? So there is a licensing component to this and a services component to this. Again, we can talk about it more in detail in a private conversation, but in general, there's a license for your Ignition per site that you're buying. There's a Sepasoft license on top of that, right? And then there is the Grantek services to implement our accelerator for your site. So usually the way that looks is that we'll if it's a new customer that Grantek's not working with every day, we'll usually start with some type of upfront assessment. If you are an existing customer and we know your facilities well, we might be able to skip that phase. We usually then go into a pilot or a proof of concept on a limited scoped line or a machine or something like that. And then we get into an agile methodology where we are taking feedback from your team, integrating that into the solution, adapting it to go to different processes or different facilities or rolling out to different lines at scale. We kind of treat all those a little bit differently, but that is kind of the engagement model that we go through. So yeah, fixed prices for some licensing up front around Ignition and Sepasoft, and then some Grantek services work on top of that to go through and deliver. I wish I could give a solid price per machine, per line, per whatever. What we have seen is that there's just complexities to these, and we're not quite there yet. Hopefully we'll get a little closer over time. Let me go back to my questions here. Is the app a web client? Okay, so there's two ways that Grantek has deployed this today. We do have a Ignition Vision version so it's available if you didn't want to use a web system, but the much more popular one and the one that I think we're going to see growing a lot faster is our implementation in Perspective, which is all HTML5 based visualization for all of your dashboards. So everything that Javier showed you today was in a Chrome browser and I had him full screen because I thought it looked a little bit cooler. But if I didn't have him do that, you would see all of those tabs up at the top that you would normally have. Okay, I see a question. Does the user have the capability to create their own custom visuals? Oh, this is a great question. So with what we showed today, you should think about all of those individual pieces kind of being components that can be shuffled around as you need to, right? So let's say that like, you know how Javier had the two sections where it's the work order and the current shift. If you didn't want to know things by work order and you only wanted by shift, we can reorganize that dashboard accordingly to just show the data that you care about, right? So you can think about a lot of those individual things that you saw today as components that can be redesigned and reshuffled for you. If your team is competent in Ignition perspective, you should have some availability to make your own dashboards and things like that. And there's a lot of great training online to help you with that. And then I'll also say that analysis selector that Javier was showing, he was kind of showing a pre-configured part of it that we have, but Sepasoft does provide the tools to really dive into a lot of the data and do your own ad hoc analysis and then kind of save that off as a static report as you need to. That might take a little bit more like kind of training just to make sure that you kind of know how to do it, but that is something that is a really powerful tool that does work with the software. What else do I see? Can sensors be integrated to automatically capture downtime? Yes, it depends. Depends on the sensor, depends on how you want to capture it, things like that. There are OEE systems out there that really kind of just track using sensor-based data, so it might limit you, right? But I don't see anything technically that should stop us from doing that, but I'd want to know more about that question. So if you are curious about that and want to dive more into your specific scenario, email info@grantek.com, which you see on your screen right now. Happy to do a follow-up with you. And that is something I was definitely supposed to say earlier in all of this, is if you all do want to follow up with us for any of these things, go deeper into the questions that you had today, you want that personal demo, things like that, info@grantek.com. It's on your screen right now. That'll send it to Jeff, who will send it over to me. Okay, and I don't see a question I feel like I can answer in the 2 minutes that we have left. I do see a question, or sorry, maybe around if this can be integrated in OSI Pi. So this is funny. This is a question I actually got a little earlier today. And Javier, correct me if I'm wrong. Like we can integrate Pi data into Ignition, not a problem, right? Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So we can get to your Pi data through Ignition. If we get it into Ignition, we can get it into the OEE Accelerator. So again, there's probably some complexities to that we'll need to kind of talk through and figure out. But can Pi data be brought into Ignition in the OEE system? Yes. Okay. And with that, I'm sorry, I do see that there is more questions coming in. I'm sorry I am not able to get to all of them. Please do follow up. I would love to be able to have some more conversations around this. So please email info@grantek.com if I didn't get to your question today, or if you would just like to talk to me or Javier more. So thanks a lot, everybody, for your time. We are going to wrap it up there. Please stick around for Grantek's, or please keep an eye on Grantek's LinkedIn and our website and things like that, and our newsletters for future webinars and things. Again, thank you all so much for coming, and I look forward to talking to you again in the near future. Have a great day, everybody.